let me introduce my guest to you tonight. On my extreme right is Anna Nyokabi. She's the woman representative from Kiambu County. In the middle, we have Norman Magaya. He is the CEO of the Court Secretariat, and also with us Henry Miner, who's director of Article 19. I thank you for being with us tonight. Let's begin there before we proceed with what to expect as we approach a Thursday. And you've heard what he had to say on the wage bill, and on the wage bill. SRC in its 2013-2014 report, talking about the wage bill being at 458.7 billion shillings, with now a budget of 1.2 trillion. That's quite a lot. Let me begin with you. Have we been able to tackle that issue? Because at the time, big concern. All conversations were about to bring down the wage bill, that many thought with the new constitution, with 18, with a cap on in terms of ministries, would see lesser people in public service.
I think the government has done very well in stating the intention. And so, as we see in the first address, the president talks about the pay cut percentages. But we notice Sarah Serem and her team and the Public Service Commission team indicated that they didn't receive the letters from the president and from the deputy authorizing those cuts. And so, from the word go, you begin to see good intentions, not actualized. But the reverse of that is that we see where the president has had a constitutional cap on number of ministers, he goes ahead to have as many principal secretaries. He goes ahead to have as many advisors, defeating the very issue that was capped to reduce the number of advisors that would be disposable to the president. So, and in reality, we do not know how much those advisors earn, how many they are, because it's not an issue of public debate. We only get to know so-and-so is an advisor on occasional issues, and that has kept the wage bill as high. But we also saw Sarah Serem and her team coming up with new regulations, which in effect increased other benefits that were accruing to public officials and state officials. If you notice how much they get on travel allowances outside the country, that has tremendously been increased, and it's now lucrative to be out there. She didn't even cap how many days you ought to be out there. So officials traveling prior to the president visiting a country, then remaining there to seal certain deals, are remaining there indefinitely, and people can earn 3 times their salaries, even just on allowances.
So Nyokabi, let me bring this to you. Under Jubilee government, the wage bill still being seen to be a big problem, and yet we don't have a concurrent revenue that's matching that to ensure that the economy doesn't suffer. So what is Jubilee thinking in as far as that is concerned? Because lest we forget, it's 2 years ago, but it's still an issue.
Absolutely. Now, we cannot say that the Jubilee government is responsible for this massive wage bill. We do have a new constitution that has created the many levels of government that are there, and this has been one of the reasons that we have seen the wage bill go up. So I think we need to be a bit more broad-minded in terms of what exactly are we saying is the reason for the wage bill. That now becomes a constitutional issue in terms of, are we going to reduce the wage bill in the country, reduce the number of office holders, reduce the number of counties, reduce the number of members of parliament, senators, governors, the number of counties, and all of that is a cost and a discussion that was started in the first year. But when it comes to the issue of wage bill, the government, the Jubilee government, has introduced austerity measures. If we take a look at even travel outside, right now there are no meetings that are being held outside of normal working jurisdiction.
Yes.
So if it's parliament, if we're having our meetings, we have a one-day meeting session, either on a Monday or a Friday, which are the days that we don't sit in as parliament, and we have them within Nairobi. So what that does essentially is cut down the cost in terms of where we would be going to have our meetings. If traditionally we had them in Mombasa, Kisumu, or other parts of the country, all that has been cut down. Okay. When it comes to the issue of travel, when you travel domestically, everybody travels economy in government. So when Is the government taking steps towards that? Yes, it is,
All right.
within the confines of the
Constitution.
Constitution.
All right, Magaya, your thoughts?
I think there are two preliminary issues that you note out of the entire approach. One is that the president does so well in creating perception, but performs dismally when it comes to execution of his deeds. Two is that there is a big disconnect between what the president says and what is in his heart, because the
So how do you know
outcomes
what
then,
is in his heart?
because he never follows up what he says.
Okay.
Because the whole approach to the wage bill issue, one was that we were never given a breakdown of which sectors of our workers consumes which percentage of this wage bill, and by what amount. Two is what were the qualitative results of the forensic audit that was done in the civil servant, because then will be able to tell us which one is the biggest consumer of taxpayers' money in terms of wages and salaries, and then they could be able to address that. But one thing that I'm not sure is whether the president actually remembers that he ever initiated the debate about the wage bill, because the actions thereafter, bloating the higher rank of the civil service through multiple appointments in terms of principal secretaries, and then presiding over massive corruption that has taken place under his watch, and very little action being taken. In some of the ministries actually he came out full throttle to be able to defend the accusations of corruption, but he has all over again gone quiet when the facts came to the fore. So there is inconsistency in terms of the manner in which the whole debate on the wage bill needs to be taken. Because if we were serious about the wage bill, then we needed to give the country a breakdown of exactly which sector is consuming what
Isn't
what
SRC doing
amount.
that in its
That's-
report?
that's
The
its
the SRC actually is one of the independent commissions
Isn't that its mandate?
that,
Yeah.
that surrendered its mandate and started dancing to the gallery. The whole debate of the wage bill was never
So to
initiated.
who should the finger be pointed? The president or the SRC in this matter?
In terms of the constitutional mandate, the buck stops with SRC. In terms of providing policy direction, the buck stops with the president.
All right.
Because he has executive authority that can be able to provide
direct
policy
an
measures.
independent body?
Yes, in terms, not independent body, in terms of policy as to where he will want to go.
Okay.
And I will give you an example. If in the first 6 months, the president wanted the country to believe him where he wanted to take it, he will have taken steps that will have marked the hallmark of where he wanted his regime to go. Kibaki, in 100 days, there were kids in school, free primary education, and
All right.
everybody knew
Our
that what
yes.
was at the heart of Kibaki was free primary education.
All
But
right.
wage bill, you say one thing and then you do a different thing.
And
Very
that was
difficult.
after his first year in power. Of course, on second year, we also had other issues come up in last year's State of the Nation address, and that is what I want to look at right now. One of the clips from that State of the Nation address, Kenya, of course, been faced with numerous historical injustices in the past. This is what President Kenyatta had to say partly in his State of the Nation address last year.
I stand before you today on my own behalf, that of my government, and all past governments, to offer the sincere apology of the government of the Republic of Kenya to all our compatriots for all past wrongs. I seek your forgiveness, and may God give us the grace to draw on the lessons of this history, to unite as a people, and together embrace our future as one people and one nation.
All right, so many lauded that move by President Uhuru Kenyatta then to issue that apology, which is a recommendation, the TJRC report, but many have also worried and been concerned about why we never seen movement on that TJRC report. Your thoughts?
I think the president on that did his part. He directed the treasury to set aside 10 billion for consecutively 3 years to act as reparations for those people who may have been affected by previous injustices. But he ordered Parliament to move and discuss the TJRC report to conclusion. But we know very well that Parliament hasn't discussed that report to finality. And this is something that should concern the president, knowing that he has a majority in Parliament. But two, the challenge is the leadership within Parliament. I think Honorable Nyokabi has said that they've stopped going to Mombasa for retreats. We know that they recently were in Mombasa to discuss how they will move issues forward. And among the things they discussed, you would not see that discussing this pending TJRC report was given as a priority. Yet this is the house that, from both sides, understands that if we do not redress those injustices, cohesion is going to remain a big challenge to this country. So one, it is because parliamentarians from both sides of the house may end up being inducted. Some of them may end up being inducted. And by not discussing this report, they are, one, shirking their responsibility, but also being complicit in crime because they are covering some of their own who may have been adversely mentioned in this report.
Honorable Nyokabi, what is the hold-up on Parliament and this report?
Now, when we take a look at the number of bills and the constitutional bills that need to be passed within Parliament, it's no secret that this particular August House, the 11th August House, has passed the most bills, I believe, in the history of the country, and the workload is immense. When you take a look at whether it's the health bill, when it looks at the issues, we still have a number of constitutional bills that we need to address within Parliament and that are in progress, and we are continuing to do that, to address them. When we take a look at what are the issues in terms of what is priority, where the apology that His Excellency the President gave on behalf of his government was one for restorative justice. And I think it's commendable. This is the first time in the history of this country that we have had an apology for historical injustices of what has happened, an acknowledgement within the executive that there have been injustices and a way forward in terms of addressing them. To which I do believe that that sets the path for how do we start addressing the issues of restorative justices. And we do know that majority of the work within Parliament right now is done within the committee level. It is
so have they failed the President in what he began, would you say?
I don't believe that they have. Given the amount of work that is also being pushed through and the constitutional bills that need and the timeline that they need to be met.
So there are other priorities.
There are priorities, and I do believe that all of this will be passed in due course.
Okay.
When we take a look, we're supposed to have gone on break last week, but given that there's so much work that needs to be met within this short period of time, we will not be breaking and going through until we have the State of the Nation address that will be done by the President.
Okay. All right. Let's hear from Magaya.
I think, Sophia, an apology is only good enough if the person offering the apology has the conviction in what he's saying. Up to now, there is no evidence to suggest that the President ever believed in the apology he offered. One, we have seen on many respects, when the President wants an agenda pursued in Parliament, we know the vigor with which the Jubilee parliamentary leadership operates in pushing an agenda forward. We have seen Parliament being recalled when they were on recess to come and pass draconian laws in an acrimonious manner, if ever there was a will on the part of the executive. And I think there is no bigger priority than us confronting the past misdeeds, the past historical injustices of this country, to lay a stable foundation for the future of this country. Because if every time we want to make progress as a country, we look back on our shoulders and we are not able to confront the ills of the past, then we will be failing because we will not create a stable platform for the future generations of this country. And some of the President's actions, some of his public pronouncements have left no doubt that the President really, one, has no belief in execution and implementation of the TJRC report. If you look at the actions in the course, his pronouncements that you are going to pay 180,000 shillings leases per year because you did not vote for me, and he said, wacha tusidanganyane. I mean, you're looking at a president who is addressing a marginalized coastal community that wants to mark a new beginning through ownership of land. But the pronouncements you get from a head of state, because there is a higher calling when you are head of state, that beyond the usual politics of the day, the nation looks up to you as a symbol of unity, as a symbol of hope.
My friend.
Okay.
And when you don't inspire that, then there is
There's
a
something you want
challenge
to say,
somewhere.
Yes, yes, absolutely. My friend, you know, I think it's really wrong of you to try to misdirect and misguide the whole nation on public television that really the president has no interest. When we take a look at the justices that he's going in to take care of, all the land that the previous Minister for Lands during the Nusumkate government had allocated himself, all of that land has been taken back and given back to the communities that it belongs to. When we start talking about that the president is not serious in his mandate, he is extremely serious. In fact, I don't believe that we have...
Honorable Nyokabi, which minister in the Nusumkate government, which the president was part of, allocated themselves
Who was the
land?
minister? Who was the minister
Orengo
of?
was the minister of land,
That's right.
while the president
How
was
many
the minister
acres?
of finance. So
And?
if there was any restitution that ought to have been there,
Yes.
let's understand that the president and the deputy initially were part of all these governments. So to pretend that they are angels that have dropped on us from nowhere is
I
also
believe
misleading.
I believe you're trying to misguide us. What
No,
I
I'm
am,
not
I
misguiding
am,
anyone.
because what I'm
Misguiding
saying
the
is
Okay,
this:
one at a
that
time.
the land
And
the land
restitution.
One at a
issues that
time.
were there and the issues that
Yes.
are being addressed currently right now is not, you know, these are not issues that need to be addressed very carelessly and by the roadside.
Nobody has said they
what
ought to
what
be
is being
addressed by the
done
roadside.
is we can see that all of these issues are being addressed countrywide. Whether it's in Meru, where they have never had title deeds, we are seeing that the government is progressively addressing all of these issues. Whether it goes on to Western, where also there's an issue of title deeds, the government is taking a very proactive...
As a person,
Yes.
I appreciate the issue of land titling and the issue that by the last address, the president said 400,000 titles had been issued and a titling center had been created with a view that 3 million Kenyans would have titles. But that's not the question on how do we gauge the responsiveness of the president to dealing with transitional justice issues. It was beyond land. It
was one of the
it
issues.
had other massive issues. There are communities that were annihilated by security agencies. Have we seen that budgetary allocation happening? Have we seen state officials that were responsible
All right.
being held to account? Have we seen a visit by any senior official from government going to a gala to say, we wronged you for ages and this is what we are going to do to restitute you? So the first year, and that's why I said, for me, it's a positive measure that the president showed an action
Yes.
and he directed his officials to set a fund. But that's not what we will measure him on. This is the third year. We will measure him on action from that promise that he made.
All right.
We will measure MPs
Yes.
on why haven't they discussed this critical thing. We have seen for a number of times Parliament adjourning because of lack of quorum. So we can't now say a Parliament that has more MPs because it has just passed more bills than the previous Parliament, that is a sufficient marker that you're doing well. Your mandate is clear-cut
All right.
for you. The
So-
Constitution stipulates
Yes.
how many bills you must pass for what year. When
All
you
right.
fail to do that, let's not scatter around and begin
It's
saying...
not
there
even
are-
an
I
issue
need
of
us to
setting...
move this along. Please forgive me, because we still have to get to Thursday's address, which is
Yes.
3 years on. We have looked at least some of the highlights from the last two. And there is a part of his statement that saw him receive a standing ovation from both sides of the political divide.